Hi, everyone, and welcome to Lionhearted Talks, here to provide knowledge to empower you. My name's Melissa, and I own Lionheart Kinesiology here in Sydney. I am delighted today to share information with you about how kinesiology can help those with a neurodiverse condition or those that are experiencing learning difficulties in any way. So, one of the ways that kinesiology shines is as a complementary approach to those with autism, ADHD, or other neurodiverse conditions such as dyslexia, obsessive compulsive disorders, or other learning difficulties that they might be experiencing. So, before we continue any further, just wanted to state that kinesiology doesn't intend to replace any existing therapy, such as occupational therapists or medical professional that you may be working with, but it's simply here as an approach to complement them. So, and the other thing is that we're here to support the whole family unit as well on this journey. So it's really important to flag that up front. But setting that all aside for a moment, you'll notice that I have a very special guest here with me this week. I'd like to welcome fellow kinesiologist and mind body medicine practitioner Beck from Marikai Health, located in the Murrumbateman and Canberra area. So, hi Beck, welcome.
Hi everyone.
So just getting straight into it. So Beck, what would be the first aspect you would consider when working with an adult or child with a neurodiverse condition or learning difficulty?
One of the first things would probably be considering primitive reflexes. So primitive reflexes are sort of complex and automated involuntary movements that involve during fetal life. And usually they peak during birth and the months after birth. And usually they integrate by around that 6 to 9 months of age. And as the brain matures, they need to be integrated into more mature motor skills and voluntary muscle motor behaviors. But however, sometimes certain reflexes may be delayed in integrating or they don't integrate at all, or you may have clusters of reflexes that don't. And often when that happens, it can have a significant impact on the child's motor, social, or cognitive development sometimes. An example might be if a child can't sit still in a chair all the time, constantly moving, wiggling, it could be that the spinal galant reflex hasn't integrated, and that would be something, we could look at helping with.
Yeah, totally. And, I just was wondering, just for those that are listening, what other problems might a child or adult be experiencing that might indicate to us that their primitive reflexes have failed to integrate in some way?
There are lots of heaps of different things,
Yeah.
but a few might be extreme anxiety, difficulties with hand-eye coordination, fine motor skills, gross motor skills, speech difficulties. They may get hypersensitivity around the mouth, and oversensitivity to noise and sound, difficulty writing, motion sickness, balance issues. It could be things like focus, issues with focus and sustaining concentration.
Yeah.
But then there's other things like low immune system, the fidgeting, the restlessness, like the list is massive. They're sort of probably more of the common ones that we'd see in clinic. But it's important to note that there are usually always, or not always, but other things that may be contributing factors at play, and that's why we would check primitive reflexes first, but then there's obviously a lot of other things that we would go on to check, yeah, if someone came in. So
Definitely.
I guess leading on from that, Mel, what would be some things that you might consider after looking at primitive reflexes?
So yes, following primitive reflex considerations, I would be considering heavy metal toxicity, gut health, and looking at neurotransmitters. For example, things like GABA, serotonin, and dopamine. Um, Heavy metals in itself has a really large impact on brain function. And there's so much research that's being done, that has been done about the link between the gut-brain connection. So it's really critical that we consider this as part of the approach. We do have kinesiology test kits with little vials in them that we can show you if you come to a session. And they're really used to give an idea of what's going on within the body. And depending on what is highlighted when we do run these tests, sometimes a hair mineral analysis might be requested, or perhaps a referral to a naturopath to support the client on their journey might be needed for some further investigations. So that's an approach. But also kinesiology also would incorporate into that, just bringing in the traditional Chinese medicine knowledge and wisdom around channels to see where there's particular channels with qi that's stuck or blocked, particularly liver, the liver channel, to really help the client with their detox pathways to ensure that they're functioning really well. So primitive reflexes, heavy metal toxicity, gut health, neurotransmitters for sure. But what else?
Look, I consider things such as acupressure points related to brain function and integration of the left and right brain, helping to improve that communication in all aspects of the brain and really that integration.
Mhm.
Would also help to calm the central nervous system, checking for things related to amygdala. Yeah, which is really good to help reduce stress in that survival brain area, which may also often have a factor. Yeah.
Totally. The nervous system is so important. And often this could be one of the first things that, happens just to get the client into a better state in terms of their nervous system. Really does make all the difference. So there's just so much to consider, isn't there, really, that when we look at this, which is why we wanted to do this talk today. So Beck, what should a client expect when they come to a session?
Yeah, so I mean, each session is totally different, and but often we may get you or your child to do some things like marching, some balancing, crawling, and this really to sort of assess that brain function and integration to see how, things are functioning. Some other little assessments we may do for primitive reflexes. So the beginning of the session could be, a lot of assessments just to see where you're tracking at and what we might need to do. We may ask you or your child to respond to some sound or read or write or do some sort of skills like that. And then the rest of the session really depends on what's shown up and where it flows and what we need to look at. But as kinesiologists, we're really trained to adapt to the client's needs and what this, the flow of the session. And we're just really happy to work with the client where they're at that time.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, the first session, I guess, would be focused on probably more around the assessments and then planning of where we're going to go. And then sometimes it will be really around just building rapport. Some kids, sometimes need that little bit of extra time to really settle and build that rapport with them. So, yeah, we understand that, obviously sometimes shorter sessions may be needed depending on the day and the client's needs of that day. We may also give homework as well. So, yeah, I guess it's a really tailored approach. No two sessions are usually ever the same. So, yeah.
Definitely. Thanks for sharing. And look, Beck and I are really hoping that you found this talk to be really empowering. If you're interested in finding out any more about how kinesiology can help you or a loved one, please reach out to me if you're in Sydney, and to Beck if you're in the Murrumbateman or Canberra area. We would both love to talk to you about your specific needs and how kinesiology can support you and your family. So thank you. Thanks, Beck, for being here today.
Thanks, Mel.